Hey everybody, welcome back to the Chorizo Bros. Joseph back at it again. So we have a lot of things going on with the show, a lot of stuff that we're planning on bringing you. So I wanted to bring it back to basics here. In between our longer form episodes, I like to do book reviews and that kind of thing. So we're going to keep that going. We're supposed to be bringing you some vampire stuff. Brandon and I were talking about doing Blade 2 at some point, so keep an eye out for that. We're supposed to get Arian back on because he read Running Man, and there's supposed to be a new movie coming out, so that's going to be exciting to do. The Richard Bachman, Stephen King books, we're going to be knocking some of those out too. And then when I have the original crew back together, we're supposed to be doing the live-action Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie, and we're also supposed to be continuing our Shyamalan-a-thon. So Chris is going to be doing that with us. We're going to be doing Unbreakable. So we've got a lot. We got a lot on the plate here to knock out, right? But as it goes, this is one of those things that we need our schedules to line up, and sometimes it gets tough to do. So in the meantime, I'm going to be reading some books. I actually didn't read this super recently. It's actually kind of been sitting on the back burner, and you guys know that I adore Clive Barker. So we're going to be knocking out 2001's Coldheart Canyon today. So the setup is a little bit different today. One of my lights, the bulb burnt out or broke or something, so I'm waiting on that to get ordered and in. I'm working with one light today, and it's casting a little bit of a shadow. It looks a little bit different, which, I don't know, it kind of works. Sitting in the conspiracy corner, you guys know about that. We're going to be bringing a new Chorizo Bro in, and we're going to be talking about Whitley Strieber's Communion. So homie Miles is 3/4 of the way through, and then we're going to be sitting and talking about alien shit. So that's going to be really fun. But today, not to get too off topic there, we're going to be talking about Coldheart Canyon, a very, I don't know that I want to call this a spoiler-free book review or anything. I think I'd want to go full force and just kind of talk about interesting things I thought about the book and whether or not I would recommend it, who I might recommend it to. This is definitely not one of my favorites of Clive Barker, but when I read it, I was like, oh yeah, this was kind of fun, and it was fun to go all the way through. I didn't feel like skipping out or setting it aside. I was like, I'm going to read it all the way through. It is entertaining. It didn't hit the mark the way some of Clive Barker's better books do. Now, the big thing here is Hollywood. As you can tell by the the cover, let's talk about that for a second. I fucking hate this cover, dude. This specific publication, this printing of it's got a full-on like portrait of Mr. Barker himself at the front, looking quite dapper. Nothing against the man for having a picture taken of himself. I don't know if this was his idea or if it was the publisher's idea. But man, I was like, dude, you could have done anything else for this cover. I would have been okay with like a very simple, just letters on the front and a simple picture. I would have liked that a lot better because the having your own portrait at the front is a little bit much for me. Then I thought about it and I was like, okay, what he's trying to comment on in this book is very much the vapid, sort of soulless nature of Hollywood. And I almost think it's poking fun at that. I don't know. I just didn't love the picture. Whatever, moving on. So this is Barker's 13th novel. Came out in 2001. And he had a pretty interesting career before this book came out. And a lot of it shows with the fact that Mr. Barker worked in Hollywood, right? So I'll get to kind of the plotting a little bit here in a second. But I do want to say up front that if the disgusting Hollywood stuff can be a trigger for you, avoid this story entirely because that was the hardest part for me. There is horror in here. It's kind of horror fantasy. That's fun if you're in the mood for it. But the fact that the setting of it takes place in Hollywood or outside of Hollywood, I really didn't like that stuff. And because it feels a little bit too real, I think is the thing. I think that if we're going to go full force into horror and fantasy, that they could have used something adjacent, but then maybe the horror wouldn't have worked. I guess it is supposed to make me feel uncomfortable, and maybe I missed the point on it. But the fact that everything that's going on in the world right now with, parties and underground stuff and illegal activities, it maybe just hit a little bit too realistic for me, that I was like, man, I don't know, it just feels a little too on the nose. Obviously, this was written in 20 something years ago, so the vibe of it is different now, and what we've seen so far is different now. But I kind of have a feeling this shit was happening all the time, and it does explore that. So, warning there. If that stuff is going to be really uncomfortable for you, skip it entirely. It's not going to work at all. Just know that going in. And again, it could be very intentional, that this is supposed to make you think, like, there are parties like this. There are characters like this that let this kind of stuff happen. And it's an open secret. Everybody knows, so know that. So as far as a 5-star rating, I'm going to probably land at a 2.5. Now, okay, usually I rate Mr. Barker a little bit higher, but after having thought about it, yes, I continued it. Yes, I pretty much did enjoy myself, but there was a little bit too much for me. Hollywood, like, bitchery. I don't know. I just made that word up. I don't know what that's supposed to be. But it did feel like, because he's got the career he has with directing movies, he is the Hellraiser guy, the Pinhead guy. He wrote Candyman. They turned one of his short stories or novellas into a movie called Nightbreed, which was in a book called Cabal. I think it's a collection of stories. So he's very familiar with how Hollywood works, and you get that feeling in here that this is like firsthand experience. And, kudos to that. It's like, hey, I'm just writing from my own experiences and kind of taking a fantastical, horrific element and kind of ironing it into there. And that's cool. But it did lean a little too heavy in the sort of gossipy nature. It did feel like he was unhappy with some of the stuff that was going on there, and he was exposing how shitty the people he worked with were, because he does name drop like old Hollywood actors, but you almost get the feel that the way he's describing like agents and casting directors and that kind of stuff, the way he describes how that works, how actors are, is very real to his own experience. It felt like he had annoying conversations like this. He seems like he would be kind of a narcissistic is kind of like maybe an asshole word to use here. But I think he even confronts his own assholery a little bit too. So he's not just pointing fingers at everybody he worked with, but he does sort of go, well, I'm part of this system too. And I can appreciate that. But, as I've learned a little bit more about how Hollywood works and how just shady and awful it is, and all these exposés they have out now about the stuff that goes on behind the scenes, it makes me really dislike Hollywood and movies, which sucks because I really love movies. So it's like you can't help that system out and criticize it at the same time. So that that's a tough one for me to kind of get over myself. Let's talk a little bit more about the book. So the basic story of this, again, I might knock out some spoiler. There might be some spoilery stuff in here. So if you're going to read it, if you want to read a horror story about Hollywood, it's like a ghost story, and you're just kind of interested in that world and want to see how hallucinogenic it can get, then yes, check it out. If you're thinking this is going to be like some of his like best-selling top work or more interesting work, it kind of misses the mark, in my opinion. So just know that. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on in the story here, because there is some like fun stuff, and I feel like I just kind of shit on it a little bit. But there's like some interesting stuff in here that I thought was kind of cool, that I appreciated. And again, it really just comes down to it's a little bit overlong, and some of the Hollywood nastiness is kind of what cuts down the enjoyment for me. Again, maybe I missed the point. So it starts off with the prologue is a trip to Romania, where our old school Hollywood actress and her like agent he's called Zephyr. They go to Romania and they visit this town where her name's Katya. Katya grew up, and they notice that this old castle is been turned into a monastery, and they hang out with this interesting monk there. It goes from being this conversation they have that he's Zephyr's trying to like purchase something, and then from the monastery wants to kind of give Katya something that's very special and unique. And through the course of it, the monk, I think he has like a drink, and the guy's like, "Oh, you're not acting like a monk." And then that's his like in. He goes, "Okay, well, if I make a big enough offer, they'll sell me some stuff. They'll sell me some things." And there's a mosaic there that's pretty interesting. It's like this. Hieronymus Bosch is brought up a lot when talking about this mosaic. It's supposed to be this like beautiful, interesting mosaic with little stone pieces. And the more you look at it, the more details you see that are really disturbing, because it looks like almost like a hunting scene. But as you look, you see like splayed bodies and nude bodies and torture and just disgusting images. Again, the Hieronymus Bosch thing is brought up a lot. And so he's like, what if I get this for her? So that's kind of like how it starts. And you're like, what's going on with this mosaic? It's really weird. And who is Katya and how is this going to play later? So that's how it starts. You're like, okay, cool. There's some weird mystical maybe stuff going on with that. And then it jumps to who I don't think is our hero here, but he's a big part of the story, Todd Pickett. So he's an actor who's kind of losing force in Hollywood. Just came out with a movie that is kind of bombing, and he's just like a handsome guy, and he's not necessarily thoroughly talented, but he can sell movies, right? So at some point he starts thinking, maybe I'm losing my appeal because I'm aging, I'm getting older, I'm looking a little bit different. So he gets the idea, or the idea is kind of sold to him, go get some facelift stuff. There's this excellent doctor, go and do that. He does, and then the surgery goes wrong, and then he decides, I need to hide away. I gotta hide away. I don't want people to see me like this. So he, through his people, go to this place where we learn that's where Katya ended up living. And of course, this kind of explodes into the story, right? So in the course of him deciding to hide away for a while and going there to kind of heal up, who I think our actual protagonist is gets introduced, and that's Tammy Lauper. I think I got that right. And Tammy Lauper ended up being my favorite character in this because she goes through the most growth. She's basically the like unofficial president of his fan club, and she's very obsessive, and to the point where like you almost feel sad for her because you can tell that like she's not in a place where she's kind of happy. She's like married, but then her husband kind of like ignores her and doesn't really care about her. They don't really sleep in the same bed, and she's got memorabilia of Todd Pickett's stuff. So she's the president of this fan club, so obsessed with this guy that whenever he slips away to go and get healed up from this surgery, that I don't remember if it goes wrong. I think he has like an allergic reaction to one of the medicines or something. So it takes a little bit longer to heal, right? But that's supposed to be secret. She calls and is like, knows the people to call, I guess. And she's like, where the fuck is he? This is out of the pattern for him, because she knows, oh, well, when he goes to vacation, he goes here. Or the paparazzi would have spotted him, and I would fucking know, right? So she's got this motherfucker so clocked that something happens, and she goes, there's something going on with that. And her instincts are right, of course. And then she goes, because this is a sane move. She goes, I don't know where he is. Don't feel like they're telling me the truth. Let me pack my shit up and go out to Hollywood, and I'll go see for myself what the fuck's going on. So this, in her like stalkery personality, in her stalkery mind, she goes, I'm gonna just fucking figure it out. And that's like this is how this story like happens. It starts off with that, where we go, obviously there's gonna be like horror shit coming in on there, but that's like what happens. She goes, she wants to figure out what the hell's going on, and then Todd meets Katya in this way, and he finds out, he's like, what the fuck's going on? Because there's something kind of magical and mystical about her. And yikes. So that's the story. I'm going to talk about some more like spoilery stuff. So dip out now if you don't want this shit spoiled for you. So there is the scene that they're depicting in the mosaic is like a hunting scene where, so like the devil's wife and child are somehow mixed in on this. And there's the count or whoever, the baron that used to live in this castle, like hunted the devil's son, and then was like, hey, I fucked up here, and then he got cursed with having to hunt the devil's son over and over, and that's his curse for doing that. And of course it's just through the pleasure of how demons and shit are, they just want someone to suffer. So that is really creepy. There's some really creepy stuff with the devil's kid in here that's like fucking disgusting, and that happens a little bit later where you nasty shit, where you go, all right, they're making this a child and they're demons, so they're supposed to act really gross. And I think Clive Barker knows how to turn sex horrific. He's been doing this shit his whole career with like Hellraiser. They always describe that shit as like the pain feels good. So he always has this like connection. You go, oh, well, figured something out about you, Mr. Barker there. So there's like weird stuff with like taking punishment as pleasure. So there's that in there. Gets a little bit icky. This whole thing with the hunting reminded me of a song called Ghost Riders in the Sky. Now, this is an old song. It's been covered a million times. Really cool, really catchy. It's like about a cowboy who like is an asshole, and he's like threatened with being cursed with having to hunt the devil's herd and like living eternity as that. So that like really like reminded me of that. There's this ongoing story of that, and it's a recurring thing because this mosaic has some kind of magical element where it's almost like a portal into another dimension, and this count and his people are stuck in there and they can't get out until they hunt the devil's kid, right? So it's our world and then theirs, and then because there's this magic of like this, it's timeless, like this castle and this mosaic have something to do with like stopping time or making it like to where Katya doesn't age. So then Todd figures that out, and so she's been doing this thing where she lures people in, and that's how it like feeds the power of this. Really interesting, strange, esoteric stuff. Super cool. Really liked that. There's a really interesting scene that I couldn't figure out why bring it up, except that it makes Todd look a little bit more sympathetic, because it didn't like really pay off later to me. Maybe I missed it, but there's a beginning of this story where we're already like, okay, I understand what the story is with Todd here, like feeling like he's becoming a has-been and then has to go through this painful process of getting facial reconstruction, right? And then there's like, he talks about his dog, having to put his dog down. And like that scene, anybody who's had an old dog and like has to put a dog down, like that shit sucks. So reading about it, it was like, oh man, like you really, maybe that's all it was, where we go, all right, Todd, I got you. I understand what's going on with you. Maybe that's all it was, but I kind of expected that to be a setup for something to pay off later with a dog, and then I don't feel like it ever happened. So I don't know. It just felt like a little bit of a distraction, because I could have just been like, okay, I understand the pain he's going through, and I can relate to, or I can not relate, and I can sympathize with that. Okay, well, anyway, moving on. So there's that. There's some great body horror in here, and of course, Barker knows how to crank that the fuck up. So the couple of scenes where we see these like mutated, like half animal, half people, when these things are introduced, I'm like, man, that's fucking crazy, because you would not want like a half ostrich, half person like attacking you and like you. Fucking crazy. There's a really weird these little monsters that Tammy has to confront at some point, and they're having this like they have this weird fascination with like Tammy's big boobs. She doesn't really find herself to be very attractive, but like men like her boobs, So there's this part where she is goading the demons to like chill them out, or whatever they are, the monsters, where like she wants to sort of disarm them so she doesn't feel scared, or like she's like, oh, this kind of works, so she disarms them going like, oh yeah, my titties, my fun bags, and they like call them, they like have this back and forth of like calling her tits different things, which was like, I laughed out loud when that happened, because it was just like, it was so absurd, and you honestly feel like it would work for the kind of monsters these are, and it was just so fucking random, and I remember laughing at that. And then you see somebody, I forget her name, but she's the person that works for Todd. She ends up being a character that I really like, and then her and Tammy sort of develop this bond where they almost like seem like sisters and friends at the end, because they bond over the experience of going to Coldheart Canyon and like what happened to them there. So that's like towards the end. And then there's like, is it an angel? I don't know. That was kind of cool to have this force, this being kind of pop in at the end there, and then some stuff happens with Todd, and you're like, okay, that's crazy. I didn't really see that coming. That's all I'll say on the matter. So yeah, pretty interesting stuff here. Again, if it wasn't for some of the horrendous descriptions of the Hollywood sex parties, if it weren't for that, if it weren't for like how much it gets leaned into, then I think I might have rated this a little bit higher. And I can see someone dipping out because of that, because it does feel a little bit much. It does feel like it's hard to explain, again, because that probably is the point. I am probably supposed to get horrified and disgusted by it, and maybe the book did kind of work in that way. So yeah, I'm probably going to come back to Barker. I think there's some other fun ones that I want to talk about. I'm probably going to come back with the I guess next collection of the Books of Blood, because I did a video on volumes 1 through 3, so a 4 through 6 might be incoming. That might be fun to do. We've got a lot on the plate, like I said. On that, I think I'm out, guys. We will see you soon. I should have another video coming for you maybe next week. Haven't figured it out yet. We're on the way. So like and subscribe, guys. Thanks for joining me. We'll see you next time.